Okay. Thank you, anybody who's watching, for tuning in for the 2017 Green Party of the United States Co-Chair Forum. My name is Chris Blankenhorn. I'm a current steering committee co-chair from Illinois. We have all 7 of our co-chair candidates on the call tonight, or this afternoon, and we're going to have a format where everybody's going to get 2 minutes to introduce themselves. We're then going to go into questions, which were submitted by the National Committee, and each candidate will get 1 minute to answer those questions. And then at the end, we will have a wrap-up where everyone will get a 2-minute closing statement. As I said, the questions have been sourced from the Green Party National Committee. Thank you, and here we go. So our first question from the listserv was, how many hours a month can you, oh, we're not getting to questions first, sorry. Totally forgot about intros. So first off, I'm going to give everybody a chance to do their intros. I'm just going to start on the top of the side for this one and move straight down. So Anita, I am unmuting you. And you are good to go.
So, can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to thank you, Chris, for putting this together. I know it was your own time. We're all volunteers, and I really appreciate the effort you put towards getting me on this call. So thank you. So I guess I just wanted to say a little bit about why I want to do this right now. I have been a Green since 2000. I am very proud of that. I feel that being a Green has made me a better person. I was an activist before that. I was a union activist. I was a farm worker activist. I'm a feminist. I'm a peace activist. I've worked in my community all my life, all my adult life. And being a Green helped me to shape a vision that I feel is more positive and more hopeful. So at this point, I decided to jump back in and throw my hat in the ring as a steering committee member. I was one of the co-chairs back from 2000 to 2001, so I have some experience doing this. I was part of the team that debriefed after the Nader campaign and opened our first office in Washington, D.C., hired our first staff, and managed that budget. I was very honored and very proud to do it, but I have to say that as a Latina, it was a very hard task. I recall that when I ran for re-election, one of the complaints that was made about me was that I didn't smile enough. I'm not a very smiley person, but you know, I don't hear that complaint made about men. I don't hear people say, well, that guy doesn't smile enough, so I'm not sure I can vote for him. So I guess I felt back then that we had a ways to go in really achieving the kind of diversity that we say we are committed to. And I feel like we have come a long way. And I want to be a part of taking those next steps to a future that is truly diverse and truly revolutionary. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Gloria Matera. And then you are unmuted and good to go, Gloria.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, Green brothers and sisters. And thank you. I want to acknowledge all the other candidates. It's kind of amazing to be in this group. And thank you, Chris, and our tech gurus for setting this all up. It's kind of a mystery to me, so I'm glad. My name is Gloria Matera, and I am currently I'm in New York. I'm a national delegate from New York and currently a co-chair of the Green Party of New York State. And I've been in leadership and organizing positions in my state and local party in my 15 years as the Green Party. I've run for office several times. I've helped on several electoral campaigns. And I encourage everyone to read not only my bio, but other bios with the link that Chris sent, so we could spend a lot more time talking about the issues and answering your questions. I'll leave it at that. I am proud of some of the accomplishments as state party co-chair, having in our bylaws that we are completely independent from Democrats and Republicans, instituting a sliding scale in terms of our dues membership, our ballot access efforts. And I'm fortunate that both in my opportunity and my work and my political work, my profession and my political work, I have extensive administrative and managerial skills and the bonus of being passionate about both those things I do. I've devoted 15 years of my time to the Green Party because I care deeply about social and economic justice and racism, respecting our 5 years in the public hospital system in New York. There is no better way to know that there's a need for radical change in everything I do every day. I'm a radical and a revolutionary, but I'm also an organizer, both in terms of organizational management of my state and local party work and in the social movements that the Green Party here in New York have participated in.
Thank you, Gloria. Since she brought it up, I will note that in the description of this video, as well as posted to the National Committee and on the voting list, is that link to all the candidates. So if you're watching this video, you can click down below and get their bios, or you can log into your National Committee account and see it there with the proposal. Next up, we have Andrea Merida, and you are good.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I'm going to boost your volume just a bit.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. My name is Andrea Merida. I actually hold a lot of hats within the Green Party from the local level all the way up. I am a current national co-chair. I want to first shout out and say that I'm the second Latina co-chair for the Green Party of the United States. And the shout out goes to my predecessor, Anita Rios, who is on this call as well and running for re-election. And I walk proudly in her footsteps. And she was very much a trailblazer for many of us that came through, was actually one of the people who happened to get the Latinx caucus, which we realized finally in 2015. She was one of those trailblazers that got that ball moving. And so I owe a lot to Anita for those footprints. But as I said, I am a current steering committee member. I'm a current co-chair of the National Party. I'm also the current co-chair of the Denver Green Party and of the Green Party of Colorado, where we have had a lot of success in maintaining our greens throughout the Bernie phenomenon, where we have actually grown our locals, where we've championed bylaws that specifically call out anti-capitalist and anti-racist behaviors that we want to gravitate toward. We're focused very much in Colorado about what kind of folks we want to talk to and who we want to build power with. And so I've been really proud to see that proliferate democratically throughout our state party and our local parties in Colorado. And certainly one of the hallmarks of my work here on the steering committee has been on the social justice and diversity aspects and on the feminist aspects as well, I would have to say. But my job here in the steering committee for the last couple of years has been about setting us up for success. And so the work that I've done is to facilitate us in various ways so that we could get to that 5% at some point. And I do think 5% of the national vote is a goal that we need to go to. As we are the electoral tactic for grassroots movements, we have to think tactically about how we're going to get there. And so in that work, I ensured that the outreach committee had enough resources to finally do its work. It's been a committee that was launched by one of our predecessors, Karen Young, that really went dormant, but I made sure that we had resources and a good budget line to make sure that they could do what they needed to do. Very important, I think. I was the one that hired and recruited the political organizer that we now have. His name is Adrian Botureira. Many of you know who he is. I also launched the search for the accountant. In order for us to be able to have resources, we have to manage what we have, and having an accountant that works with the treasurer is going to be very important. I wrote the job description and advocated for the full-time position of the media director. I worked for the funding stream and created the opportunity for Greenstream, which is a new portal we're actually using now that is going to be our outward-facing media portal. I've directly provided support and worked for the restart or launch of several state parties, most specifically Nevada, Wyoming, and Utah. I'm one of the people who regularly edit our fundraising appeals. And I've pushed for more proactive, justice-minded moderation on our Facebook groups so that our social media portals are safe for people who come from oppressed communities, and that we manage how prejudice and other things kind of manifest on those portals. We need all Greens to be able to participate. And so I have a vision for our party for the next couple of years, which is going to include more bringing things online, more resource allocation to things that are going to be important, and really creating more value in the relationship for state parties from the national party. This really needs to be a partnership that we exploit, that we improve. We're not going to get to 5% until we help our state parties get online fully. So that's going to be part of what I'm going to be looking at in the next 2 years, should I be elected. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Andrea. Next up, we have George Martin. And you are good. Good. You're good to go, George.
Taking us to the next level. For some of us, we've been taught the whole time, and at the same time,
Thank you, George. Next up, we have James Lane, and James, you are good to go.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for putting this together. It's this kind of technology is the kind of thing that's really exciting for me as a Green that's been in the party for about 17 years to see finally come to fruition. One of my concerns is always for people that don't have access to internet and computers, what can we do to sort of reach out to them? But that's another thing we could talk about later on. A bit about me, for people that don't know, I became a Green at the age of 35 when I first learned about the Nader campaign in 2000. And during that time, I considered myself an anarchist for most of my life because growing up in Harlem and seeing these politicians come in and promise stuff to our community and then leave walking away with votes from people. And I said, I just can't participate in that. That's not the kind of person I am. I'm for somebody that's saying they're going to do something and actually doing it. So that's why the Green Party was attractive to me at that time, as being, like as was mentioned before, the political arm for a lot of our movements in the street. Then from that point on, I've served in many communities. So that's why it's so great to see everyone that's running today. And I wish all of us could be elected to the co-chair because I've worked with all of you in one aspect or another. So like, for example, I served with Anita on the diversity committee when I first joined, and seeing George at the nominating convention in Wisconsin, sorry. So all these things, of course, Mike Dennis would help with phone banking, and Gloria with all the stuff we do in New York, and Andrea, so it's like so much that we have to do together. And so I come from a place of working with diverse people with diverse opinions and respecting them and listening to them and trying to find out the best solution to actually make things work out. On my bio that I submitted, a lot of it talks about my activism work, but I sort of shy away from talking about my professional work because I don't want people to think I'm some capitalist. But sadly enough, I work in the internet advertising field, and during my 15 plus years in that, I've always been starting at a sort of low position, but because the people saw my capabilities, moved me up to director, manager, even VP of an own team that was created just because they saw that I was someone that could take a vision and put a team around it and actually make it come through. So that's the kind of place that I come from. That's the kind of person I am. One of the things that sort of brings a little sadness to my heart is when I see a lot of the infighting going on the NC lists. There's a lot of enemies outside of our party. We should be making enemies within our party. And I hope that if I do get elected, that I could do something to help in resolving any of these wounds. So that's it, my short 2 minutes.
Thank you, James. We're going to go to Joy next, but I got a text while you were talking, James, that George Martin didn't show. He was black. It was a black screen and you couldn't hear him. So after Joy, I'm going to come back to you again, George, because I'm pretty sure I figured out what was going on. But Starlene messaged me. So Joy, you are good to go.
All right, thank you. My name is Joy Davis, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Outreach Committee. I'm also a Black Caucus delegate and a member of the Accreditation Committee. A little history about me. I was elected to some of the resident councils that we have, and we didn't have any kind of programs for our youth whatsoever. And so I was able to try to partner with some of these organizations such as Big Brothers and Big Sisters and try to be positive role models that we can have in our community. We've also worked with the NAACP and churches to provide services to our community as well. I speak with our youth to encourage them to participate in the governments that they have at their schools going on, the student government elections and everything like that, and to encourage them to be the change that they want seen if we are not that. So my son and I, we went to the convention here in Houston, Texas. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a former Democrat, but I was so encouraged about the Green Party's message that I knew this was the party for me. I didn't have it with the Republicans, and just because my family were Democrats, that's just what we did. And so I knew for a fact that's not what we wanted to continue to do after meeting with Jill Stein and the people there at the Green Party's convention. So recently, we've been contacting our politicians and speaking up against discriminatory policies such as SB4. I was rallying with the Brown Berets here in Houston. We've been speaking up for housing and the issues going on with that with the mayor, and also police brutality. And I was recently at one of the firefighters rallies where they were out, you know, trying to get pensions and trying to get raises. So thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Let's see, George, I'm going to unmute you real quick, and then we'll go to Michael so I don't forget. Okay, now you're not grayed out like you were before. I figured out what happened. So you should be good to go. Sorry about that, George.
Okay, you hear me okay?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, good. Hello, family. And first of all, much thanks for everyone who put this together. And again, I'm proud to be on this forum and to be running for the SC with many, many friends of mine and many who I've worked with over the years. I'm doing this because I joined the party in 2000, and I've been in the leaderships literally, for the last 17 years. There's some frustration over time in terms of how we moved from number 3 to number 4 as a major party, of how we haven't grown. And at the same time, the excitement in terms of where we are with our more recent campaigns. This is the time, and as an old Black Panther, I say seize this time. This is the time to move ahead and take it to the next level. And I want to be part of the team that does that. I bring a lot to the table. I've held every major leadership position in Wisconsin. I was elected National Co-Chair of United for Peace and Justice, the largest anti-war coalition during the Iraq War, 1,400 organizations. I served and was elected for 8 years as a Green Party member from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've served our GPS US National Committee as a delegate or alternate delegate, and also the Diversity Committee, and have been at every annual meeting for the last 16 years. I am the convener and a founding member of our Black Caucus. Also, I just want to mention this, and this is on the spiritual and unity end of things. I initiated the Green Party call to action as a ceremony that we first did during the Nader rallies in 2000. And we have used it in every one of our annual meetings since 2001. And I think that's very important with where we are today. And as James mentioned before, the lack of unity or the cohesion and sometimes the negativity, that spiritually we have to move beyond things. And I wanted to bring that up because unity is a thing that we have to move toward if we are going to take it to the next level. In terms of qualifications, the co-chairs are supposed to be spokespersons. And I want to mention that aside from my work in Wisconsin and with the peace movement, that I've spoken truth to power for peace and justice on television on every U.S. network, CNN, C-SPAN, Democracy Now!, the BBC, Al Jazeera, and television in more than 150 countries. I know how to handle and work with the media. Also, in terms of the second point of responsibility for oversight and coordination of our committees, we had similar systems in Wisconsin. At 25, I was an international marketing executive with $1 million budgets. I know how to handle money. I'm a business administration and marketing major, but my heart is in the community. And I came up, first job out of college, working in the war on poverty. And since then, I have been a former staff, board member, or consultant to more than 100 community-based organizations, also to the U.S. Departments of Labor, Health, and the National Institute of Health. I worked with homelessness for almost 30 years and still continue to do that. I've been a board member of the Liberty Tree Foundation for 8 or going on 9 years. I'm formerly, aside from United for Peace and Justice, was a board member of the U.S. Social Forum And as we talk about social movements, this is one thing I want to bring up in my closing as to my vision and how we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. And now we're going to move to Michael Dennis. You are ready to go.
Hey, fellow Greens out there. Thank you for watching, and thank you, Chris, and to all of my fellow Greens who are also running for co-chair. It was very warming to my heart to hear a lot of your visions and your experience, and I hope I have the honor of serving alongside some of you and continuing to work alongside of you in the Green Party. I am the current national delegate for the Youth Caucus. I'm also a leader in the Lavender Caucus and am assisting the accreditation process for the Disability Caucus. I was most recently the deputy campaign manager for Sherry Honkala's race for state legislature in Pennsylvania in a frontline community in North Philadelphia. And most of you may know me as the systems manager for the Stein Baraka campaign, where I had my hands in any number of things in most areas of the campaign, setting up our largest phone banking operation, as well as text banking, putting together a lot of the aspects of the website and database and document archiving, setting up a 50-state social media strategy, as well as assisting with fundraising and setting up structures for ballot access so that volunteers can be gathered from our website, phone banked, and actually utilized in the field as petitioners so that we don't necessarily need to utilize so many paid petitioners. I encourage everyone to read the bios of all of the candidates for all of our extensive histories and backgrounds on the website. I do agree that the steering committee of the Green Party is largely an administrative body, but there's a lot to administer. And I think that we need to have some better structures and efforts to make things more efficient, more transparent, and more collaborative so that we are utilizing volunteers, so that our committee are more efficient, so that we have the information that we need to provide resources to our states and our identity caucuses. I hope to be able to serve y'all in that way, and I am willing to put in my damnedest work to get that done and to contribute in that way. So, thanks.
Thank you, Michael. So, now that we have done our intros, we're going to move into questions. As I said before, all the questions were submitted by the National Committee, or members of the National Committee, and every candidate is going to get 1 minute to answer each question. Some of the questions will be multi-part, some of them will be single issue, single question. So I'm going to try to do it as randomly as I can. So this first question, I'm actually going to go backwards from the direction we did last time, and we're going to start with Michael Dennis. The first question from the list is, how many hours a month can you realistically dedicate to this steering committee role? And Michael, you are good to go.
I would say easily 50. I think roughly a little more than 10 hours a week is what I would allot for myself, which is a little more than 1 hour a day. But knowing that I love this work and I love this party, I'm gonna put a lot more than you and I allot into it. So I think 50 would be completely reasonable for me to say.
Thank you, Michael. Moving on to Joy. You are unmuted and good to go.
All right, thank you. I can dedicate many hours because I believe this would be my job if I were to be elected.
Okay. Next up, we have James Lane. You are good to go.
Great. Well, last year I got laid off from my former job and got into a more thankless job where I'm currently working 16 hours a day. But as I mentioned before, in my current job, I've actually already put in through some implementations to actually change everything around. So it looks like at a minimum, I'd probably be doing 40 hours a month. If I'm saying I'll do like an hour in the morning, hour in the evening, such as that. And at the most, maybe 60 hours a month if I did like hour in the morning, afternoon, and evening.
Okay. Next up, we have George Martin.
Well, I consider myself a free man. I quit working for anyone 10 years ago. And I pick and choose my battles. And in gearing up for this, every year I look at what I do well and what I'm doing, and I change things in terms of what I'm focused on. And our party is my focus. After August 1, I have no real commitments. The end of August, I'm going to have both knees replaced, and so I'll be able to be on my computer 24 hours a day, darn near. But I look forward to, in terms of my work, being able to commit 70, 80 hours a month coming up into this future as needed, because I do have that type of flexibility, and this is my commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Next up, we have Andrea, and you are good to go.
Well, because I control the means of my own production and work for myself at home, I easily spend 30 hours a week working in this capacity as national co-chair, just reaching out to state parties and help mitigating issues and liaison duties and all of these kinds of things. So I don't see that that's going to change. And hopefully what we're looking at is the fact that we have a steering committee of people who are actually doing administrative work that really should be in the hands of paid staff. And so we have to think about, whether or not we have the capacity to take on some of those roles as we increase our resources and be able to bring paid staff on. So.
Thank you, Andrea. Next up, we have Gloria, and you're good to go.
Thank you. I'm fairly certain I can devote in the 40-hour range, kind of minimum. I do have a full-time job with the kind of flexibility that I can do that work at various times. So I've put a lot of hours into being co-chair and also kind of just doing general Green Party work in my local. So like my colleagues here, my comrades here, I feel very devoted to the party and know that whenever there is free time, and I'm talking about the 40 hours in addition to what I know is probably required, a certain amount of hours of conference calls. So, which I'm not clear how that is, but I'm sure it is significant. Thank you.
And Anita, whenever you are ready.
Okay, so about 4 years ago, the state of Ohio cracked down on abortion clinics and put a number of them out of business, and that is where I was employed. I was a patient advocate at the first abortion clinic to open in Toledo, and so I'm unemployed now. And I am fairly certain I would be able to devote as much time as is necessary to this position. Now, having been in this position before, one thing I noted is that it does ebb and flow. There are times, like coming close to our national meetings, where it is endless hours that you put in. And I am more than willing to do that. I like everybody else has said, I am dedicated to building this party and will put in as many hours as necessary.
Thank you, Anita. Yeah, I'm happy to see people committing to time. I should show you my June planner. It is pretty insane between voting system updates and the A&M. Our next question is going to be about fundraising. The Green Party of the United States has fundraising staff that the steering committee oversees. How can we grow our current fundraising abilities? I'm going to start with George.
Thank you.
You're good.
Yeah, you know, in terms of fundraising, and I can't speak to exactly where we are today, but as a trainer and a facilitator, and with my former experience, I do know that if we are not doing long-range development planning that encompasses those things over 3 or 4 years at least, that it really shortens our aspect as we work year to year. So that's something that if we're not doing, I would certainly want to be involved in. And at the same time, if we are, embellish it. When we talk about fundraising, and it was brought up earlier, that in terms of staffing needs to do types of jobs, to me that also applies to committees that don't necessarily have to be our members, but where we can possibly recruit experts in the field of development and experts in those specialty areas who can be an advisory and help us get into the system better. So as we move ahead and evolve, we can do a better job at all those things that are connected, as was mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Next, I'm going to move to James Lane, and you are unmuted and good to go.
Great. Okay, I'm presenting. Okay, great. So the fundraising, the first thing you always have to do is take an analysis of where you are right now and where do you want to be. And a lot of people just go into fundraising and thinking, oh, if we had this list, you know, it's like Glengarry Glen Ross. If we had this list, we can get everything done. It's not like that at all. What is your plan on fundraising? If you have a list, how are you going to reach out to people? Are you going to do it on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis? We also have to look into the resources available, look at our membership list. You know, the way I look at fundraising, it's also our party's, I guess, appearance. You know, if you have, like as I mentioned before, about infighting and a lot of negative things going on around the party, who would want to donate to that? So you can have the best fundraising plan, the best fundraisers available, but until you fix a lot of issues that are going on in and around the party, you only get $1. So that's what I'm saying. The whole thing is about, you know, taking an analysis of what we currently have, what we're currently doing, seeing if there's anything that we should scrap, and seeing anything that we should improve upon.
Thank you, George, or not George, James.
That's a compliment. Thank you.
And next, I'm going to move to Joy. Go ahead.
One of the ways that I would work in order to grow fundraising, I think we have to make sure that we are getting the people engaged. And once we have the people engaged, that involves us going out into the communities and sharing our platform and sharing what the Green Party is about and how what we're doing is helping them actually. And so I think once we are seen in the community helping people, they will be willing to help us and help grow, excuse me, and help our candidates and everything.
Okay. Next up is Michael Dennis. Go ahead.
First, I want to acknowledge our awesome fundraising staff and fundraising committee that we do have. There's not many people in the party who are working on fundraising, and those who are putting in that work are doing an awesome job. We need more people assisting with fundraising, joining the fundraising committee. And certainly we need a comprehensive plan put in place. I think elements of those plan, one is that we have over 1,000 volunteers sitting in our database who say that they want to help with fundraising. I also think that if there's, you know, theoretically 200,000 Greens or whatnot in the United States, and our database only has 75,000 entries in it, that we have over 100,000 people that we should be able to easily, hopefully, get their information, and that would, right there, double our potential people that we can send email blasts to. I think fundraising is very aligned with ballot access because ballot access is our main fundraising tool, so we need some ballot access wins. and we need to figure out some ways so that we can better coordinate with our visible figures in the party, such as Jill, Ajamu, Carrie, and others, so that we can utilize their public persona to the benefit of the party.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we have Anita. You are unmuted and good to go.
So I would say I think we have a lot to do for fundraising. That is not to say we don't have a very good dedicated crew, but I think that we need more resources put towards fundraising. I think we need to improve our fundraising PR, so to speak. In short, I feel that we need to connect our fundraising in a more concrete way with the work that we are doing and the people who are doing that green work in communities. Greens are activists. We do great work in our communities. Our vision is uplifting. It's powerful. I think it connects with a lot of people, or it would connect with a lot of people. And I think we need to do a better job of making that connection for people.
Thank you, Anita. Next up, we have Gloria. You're good to go.
I'd also like to acknowledge the great work that the fundraising staff we do have is doing for the party, and also to acknowledge the steering committee for making that a paid position as a priority. I think we need to have additional staff being able to do that. Fundraising is challenging, and I would agree that it might be a way to integrate some volunteers or people who want to help in a national way, but my experience as a candidate many times, raising money for a candidate, raising money for my state party, is that it's hard work and people need training to do that. It's not such an easy volunteer job. So we need people who are trained, providing that training, that inspiration with a virtual phone bank. But I also am supportive of finding a way for the National Party to move into a due structure for individuals to be able to support their party in the way many people, many activists support a variety of NGO and other kinds of causes. This is important for us. We've been building this party for a long time, and I think we can find a way to have a due structure that is fair, reasonable, and does not affect how some of the state parties feel a dues paying membership might compromise them in terms of their electoral laws in their state.
Thank you, Gloria. Next up, we have Andrea, and you're good.
Gloria, absolutely, absolutely. I'm glad that you broached that topic, because I was going to be the one to break that ice. You know, first of all, I want to say Starlene Rankin is our full-time fundraiser. We just brought her on at the beginning of this year as the full-time fundraiser, which was something that I really pushed for and championed. To bring her on full time. And so, you know, she was 3/4 time toward the end of last year, and now she's full time. So we're still kind of ramping up. But I have to say, you know, echoing back kind of what Gloria was saying, we need to have a good discussion about a compromise between the concepts of dues paying membership versus donations. Now, as a co-chair of the Green Party of Denver, we are a dues paying organization. It's a very modest one. We have several comrades in our local who are actually count as the houseless members who are not able to give regularly, but we have, you know, flexibility for folks who can't do that. And so with those dues that get paid, we do the basics. We're able to do even the basics of outreach by actually having a consistent place to meet every month. We don't have to scramble for a place to meet and who's going to give us their living room or their coffee shop or whatever. This is a dedicated funding source to being available for people who want to get involved on a regular basis, right? So there's this issue of these, we need the basic resources, and I think a national membership dues structure, which of course would be flexible, which we could, you know, waive certain things. I should say I do not believe in asking people to volunteer in lieu of donations, because, you know, I don't appreciate you know, exploiting people in that way. Now, we also have to recognize that if we want a structure that is based on donations, we have to be mindful of the fact that there is a tendency in the nonprofit organization world to deify the person who has the resources to donate. And so we have to balance out, you know, what do donations actually look like? What does a donation buy? And we also, each individually, I want to call out every green around the country. We each individually need to take responsibility for actually providing these resources and donating. We have a sustaining membership, or excuse me, a sustaining a donation structure of just $5 a month. And if every green, we have approximately 250,000 registered greens in states where there is party registration. And if every one of those greens would actually contribute $1, $2, $5 a month consistently, we would have a lot of resources. And so we have to adopt this culture of collectively resourcing our party, in addition to making sure that we're looking at consistent resources by examining a really good dues paid membership situation. Thanks.
Thank you. So our next, let me figure out where that echo is coming from. Okay, our next question. We've had people talk about the role of the steering committee, and whether it's, you know, administrative body versus leadership. Regarding the administrative side of that, this is a multi-part question. What administrative experience do you have? How many people have you ever been responsible for supervising as either paid staff or volunteers? Have you ever had to terminate a staff member or been involved in a labor dispute? And that's where I'm going to group that set of questions. So to recap, what is your administrative experience? How many people have you ever been responsible for supervising? And have you ever had to terminate a staff member or been involved in a labor dispute? I'm going to start with Joy. And Joy, you are good to go.
Thank you. I do have administrative experience. I have worked as an accounting assistant, and so we've had to invoice, we had to do payroll, wire transfers, make sure our invoices were getting paid on time, and make sure the billing was going out. I've done vendor maintenance as far as setting up our vendors in our database to use so we can pay them on time. And I've also been responsible for expense reports and, you know, such as employee reimbursements. So I have experience as far as the administrative side. So now we're, you know, as co-chair for the outreach committee, we are facilitating meetings, we're getting the minutes out. I like to say that I've never had to terminate any kind of staff, which is a good thing. And I've never been involved in any kind of labor disputes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joy. Next up, we have James Lane, and you are unmuted.
Yeah, so my past 30 plus years of working, I have a lot of administrative experience. As I mentioned, I always work from the ground up. And when I've managed teams, I've always been somebody that digs into actually the work that has to be done. So I'm one of those managers that actually rolls up their sleeves and gets in, know what the job entails, and to also work out efficiencies when needed. As far as number of people I've managed at a time, in my corporate world, probably about 20 or so. And in I started an independent news website 15 years ago. And there was one time in 2007 when I was actually managing 100 writers that were writing for the website at the time, until everything went bust in 2008. So I have a lot of experience with managing people, managing multiple tasks, you know, making deadlines, which is always a key thing in a lot of these positions. As far as firing people, I've had, I think, 2 or 3 instances where I actually did have to fire people, and they're always very upsetting to do, but they had to happen. One was somebody that I hired, and they weren't really doing the job the way that it needed to be as per the job had changed, and they needed to change their work structure, and they weren't really ready to change. And I tried to work with my bosses to find if there's somewhere else that we could situate them sadly enough, there wasn't. And so, you know, she had to get let go. But also, after she left go, I got her to work for my independent news site until she found another job. So I have a bad habit of doing that. And another person in the same situation too. Our job was actually went through a big merger. The child company ate up our parent company. They laid off 2/3 of our team, which is really upsetting. And I was there, and they actually did the layoffs, but I was in charge of telling them that they had to go. And same thing with them. I tried to help them move to their next position, as far as whether it was helping with resume writing skills or interviews and stuff like that. So always meeting these painful decisions and trying to see what we can do to help people out, because, you know, I understand things have to happen sometimes, but if there's anything that you can do to transition people from that step to the next step, it helps.
Thank you, James. Next up, we're going to have, if I can click the button, we're going to have George. George, you are unmuted and good to go.
Well, thank you. I'm probably the oldest here. And I started early. I was always the youngest on the block. At 14, my activism began. At 21, working in the war on poverty, at 21 years of age, I was supervising 40 people who were all older than me. And in high school, my hair was completely gray, as it was with both my grandfathers. I dyed my hair in that job. I quit dyeing my hair so I could get a little respect in it. But, you know, I've had a lot of experience. As I mentioned, I'm a biz ed major. I've been a corporate executive. I've been an entrepreneur. I've had my own company with 15 employees in sports and corporate promotion at $1 million, multi-million-dollar level. I've worked with a lot of companies and a lot of organizations in terms of this kinds of things. I've been this gamut. I'll just skip down when it comes to budgeting. That's been one of my fortes. On the corporate end, I had great skill at pro forma budgeting, which means doing budgeting 10 and 15 years out so as to develop your organization. I feel that that's a real skill of mine. It still applies. Peace Action's National Education Fund, I was on the finance committee for 13 years nationally. So this is something that I really don't shy away from. And have you ever had to terminate a staff member? I'll tell you, one time I was at a festival and this woman walked up to me and I didn't recognize her. And she said, "I want to thank you for firing me when I was young." And I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, you really woke me up. I was going down the wrong trail. That shook me up. I turned it around and I'm successful. But I just want to thank you for firing me." Thank you for hearing me out on that one.
Thank you, George. Next up, we have Andrea. You're good.
So with regard to administrative experience, I pointed out to the leadership roles that I play in my local and my state party, as well as a current sitting member of the SC. The Green Party of the United States is currently operating on a budget of $405,000. We have 5 employees, 4 of which are full-time, 1 of which I directly supervise. In addition to that, I'm one of the few members of the National Committee, and certainly the only one on the steering committee currently who is an actual elected official. I was Denver's first elected Green, and I served on the Denver School Board, where that budget was over $1 billion. Oversaw a teaching cadre of about 6,000 teachers, et cetera, et cetera. So as far as firing people, first of all, I like to think in terms of hiring the right person. I currently serve as one of the members of the personnel working group, and we have taken pains to make sure that we're scrutinizing and making sure that we have the right person for the job. In terms of firing people, though, going back to that, I did have to fire people. It was part of state law while I was serving on the school board that you had to actually fire teachers. Imagine that, right? And so I was a person who actually fought on behalf of the collective bargaining rights of the teachers. I support collective bargaining for all employees. There were times where teachers actually were not effective, and we had to let them go. That's absolutely true. So, you know, I have a lot of that sort of experience and more in the vision and the, you know, long range planning and that sort of thing. And you know, as I alluded to earlier in my opening comments, the administration, as far as setting us up for success going into the future. I mean, the steering committee is contemplated within our bylaws as an administrative committee, but it also has the role, the designated role as the spokespeople of the party, right? And so it's not just, you know, paper pushing, but it's also sort of a soft leadership as regards putting forward resources and setting forward strategies and putting questions before the national committee, that sort of thing. So, you know, administration for me in terms of this role has been setting us up for success with an eye toward making sure that we're doing things justice-minded. So, thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Next up, we have Gloria, and you're unmuted.
Okay. As state party co-chair, I have recruited, interviewed, hired, supervised, paid staff over the years, whether it's, we have a paid organizer, statewide organizer, or petition coordinators. But really the bulk of my administrative work has come from my job as department head running the Child Life Department at Public Hospital here in New York City. I have 15 staff. I supervise them both clinically, which really means they do really hard work. They work in the areas of death and dying, trauma, chronic illness, life-threatening illness. And so the kind of supervision there is very different, although they are administratively responsible to me and to the department that I head. And so therefore there are policies and procedures that are developed, and working with them in that way. My first experience with labor relations in the hospital was a very humbling one, because I formerly was a union member myself, and all our staff collective bargaining, and I encourage them to be active in that aspect of their job. But so I really thought I was approaching a labor relations situation more as a partnership, as the way I do with staff person to staff person in my own department. I will say I've never had to fire anyone, but I've done the required steps of counseling and warning and setting up you know, kind of plans of action to work together. I have been fortunate that in most cases it's been collaborative and successful, but I have learned a tremendous amount in terms of how to manage staff and set certain boundaries while trying to understand the pressures that someone's job is putting on them.
Thank you, Gloria. Anita, you are unmuted and on screen.
Okay, so as I said, I've been co-chair of the National Committee before, and I was responsible for hiring and firing, and have done that. But at the same time, you know, I also look at the skills. I've also been a labor representative. I was the head of the union at one of my jobs for about 5 years, and I negotiated labor contracts. So when we hired our first people as the Green Party of the United States, I insisted that we looked at best practices for how we employ somebody. But in terms of this question in particular, I would say that a part of me wonders if this is a classist question, because I would say to a single mom who has to balance her family's budget, who has to make sure that her children get health care and get schooling, that person has wonderful administrative skills. And I would count that as on par with any executive skills. So I would just remind us that we're the Green Party. We know how to think outside of the box. So let's do that with respect to our own leadership.
Thank you, Anita. And Mike McDenis, you are our last response to this question.
I want to pause and echo Anita's wisdom that she just shared there, and thank her for sharing that comment. While I might be a young Green delegate, I certainly also have professional administrative experience. From a young age, at 16, I held a position as a page for the U.S. Congress and oversaw my colleagues administering tasks from the House floor. I've also been an executive in a travel tech company, administering and overseeing the administration of over 50 accounts with multi-million-dollar travel spend. I also oversaw about 20 people managing the training section of an Apple store, multiple dozens of volunteers, text bankers, whatnot, during the Stein campaign. As far as budgets, when I worked for the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, I oversaw the budget of the state legislator that I worked for, which was maybe about $60,000, as well as the staffing budget. Negotiated a staffing dispute with the Speaker's office during my time there. I dealt with legal contracts. During my travel tech job, I was the lead negotiator for various contracts with hotel and charter airline companies, which were, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I haven't had to let anyone go, fortunately. Within the Young Greens, I will say that I have asked people who are not putting in work to resign from their position, and thus, since then, we've rewritten the bylaws of the Youth Caucus to define ourselves as a working committee and setting up easier procedures for if someone who is not necessarily contributing and fulfilling their duty to be asked to, or if necessary, voted to be removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So we did about an hour on this live stream. Is everyone okay? And I can see you nod at the bottom and things. If we try to get 3 more questions in and then do our outros? Okay. Kind of transitioning going from the administration to some bigger picture things. The next question from the National Committee is, what internal administrative changes do you think could be helpful for the Green Party of the United States? And I'm going to start this one off with Anita. Anita, you are unmuted and on screen.
Okay, so clearly we need to be more user-friendly. We need to be more transparent. Now, how to accomplish that is the real answer. And I'm not going to tell you I have an answer for all of that. I think that is an answer that we have to come to in a collaborative way. I have had some ideas over the years about how we accomplish this. One of the flaws that I feel is that sometimes the National Committee itself is disconnected from the state parties in a sense. And the actions of the National Committee are a little nebulous to the state parties. So I would want to strengthen that connection, and how to do that, I think, is to have more regional collaborations and communications. So I think sometimes the chaos of our communications really hinders our transparency and really hinders our accountability. So transparency and accountability, that would be the big goals for me. But again, I would just most humbly tell you, I don't have a big answer for that. I hope that if we had more regional communications and more regional awareness of who we are as Greens, that we could establish some better accountability and better transparency. But so that's what I would share at this moment, and say that as co-chair, I would want to have this be a very prominent discussion and collaboration with the National Committee.
Thank you, Anita. Gloria, you are good to go.
Okay. Well, I feel there are several areas to cover. One is accountability, improving communication, and definitely transparency. In terms of accountability, I know that, let me take a step back. I mean, everybody, we are all doing this as volunteers. Our committee chairs, committee members, people are volunteers. And so, you know, we all must acknowledge that there are things that happen that may make your energy level and participation ebb and flow. It's important to be able to communicate with people. Maybe it's not time for you to continue to heading that committee or running this initiative. I think some of the communication improvements we have done at our state party, which I see would like to talk about putting in the national party, is we put out our executive committee minutes to our state committee members to be able to review those. Any motions or discussions we often have on our listserv just for executive committee members, but people on our state committee can see what we're talking about and therefore contact us at the time. They don't have to wait till a motion is passed to say something. I also feel that both accountability and kind of bulking up of resources for the national committees. There are many, many national committees, though I see them in two different tracks. One is those committees that really need resources and support and training to be able to do the internal work, the engine of the party, to keep that going. And then there are committees who really seem to be focused more on issues. And how can we help those committees be able to connect both with the social movements they are engaging in and that committee's focused on, animal rights, eco-action, and then be able to bring that into building of the party. I really have been paying attention to a lot of the comments coming up on the listserv about hearing more from the steering committee, about the steering committee taking a more active role. In our executive committee in New York, every executive committee member is a working member of a committee. And therefore they know what's going on and they can report back to the executive committee. They can support the co-chairs of that committee. And I would like to see much more engagement in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Next up, we have Andrea. You are live.
Can you restate that question?
Yeah, no problem. What internal administrative changes do you think could be helpful for the Green Party of the United States?
Yeah, so I should point out that every member of the steering committee is a liaison to one of our internal working committees, and we've adopted a practice, and this stuff gets reported in the minutes that go out, but we've adopted a practice, and it's been a long time now, that there are liaison reports as a regular part of the agenda. And of course, the steering committee calls are always open to anyone to come in and observe. And the minutes are posted to not only to the listserv but also to gpus.org, which is our internal administrative kind of, where we house the bylaws and things like that. So, but we have a situation right now where there's a small handful of people that are actually working on our committees, right? And so part of our communication issues might be that some of these folks are actually quite overwhelmed. And so what I have advocated for in the steering committee is more of a kind of a stronger liaison role, a more proactive liaison role for those steering committee members to actually go out and recruit new membership, right? To actually make sure that things are being communicated and votes are actually held, and that they're held accountable to their internal democratic processes. The other thing I have to say too, one of the primary things that we ought to be looking at right away internally is how we handle conflict in our committees. What are the goals of the committees? The steering committee right now is sort of doing an overview of the rules of each one of the committees that we liaise. I don't know if that's a verb or not, but because there are some inconsistencies there. You have, for example, most committees have a requirement that you have to actually be appointed to serve in that committee from your state party, but the outreach committee doesn't have that requirement, for example. And so that, there was rationale for doing that in terms of trying to get people to come in and participate. So we have to look at consistency and whether or not those kind of rules are actually working. But definitely conflict resolution. I think that we're very slow to diffuse conflict, and I think the co-chairs of committees need to be mediators more. And we just have to recruit more people to some of these internal committees. I want to give a shout out to Holly Hart, for example, who's involved and is a co-chair for a ton of committees. And I mean, there's a few people that work as hard as she does. And we just need some other leadership to step up and help her take some of these responsibilities off her plate. And it's not just her, it's Tama Yeager, for example, who serves with me on the steering committee, who is going absolutely bonkers trying to manage this annual national meeting that is going to come off next week. So, we have to look at all of those things: conflict resolution, making sure we're doing leadership development, making sure that the steering committee liaison role is more proactive and mediating and recruiting and that sort of thing like that. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. If we only have to do one, why do I have 5? Next is, sorry for my little commentary there. Next is George Martin. You are live and good to go.
Well, good. Thank you. I'd certainly hesitate to evaluate internal operations that I'm not a part of. It's always different from the outside looking in. So I really appreciate the comments of the other candidates here. I think, I'd be in a kind of unique position not having been in the fray to view it with fresh eyes, and also with my background and in terms of working with folks. And so I would look forward to that. So I'll just be brief. It's come up a couple times in terms of this whole different perspectives that we have, and in some sense of unity or mutual respect. It's been addressed by a number of you in some fashion, but that's what shows out for us on the outside, literally, and just being aware of that. So as someone who would be new coming in, I would welcome that opportunity to join in your efforts in terms of making things better. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Next up, we have James, and you are live.
I was smiling when George answered because I felt the same way too. I'm somebody speaking from the outside looking in. I don't know exactly the day-to-day of what's going on with the steering committee, so it's hard for me to comment on what changes I would make. But of course, I'm a worker, and I like to work smart, not hard. So what I'd like to do is take a look at current processes, take a look at current issues that we're having. Like was mentioned, there's a lot of communication issues. We're going to have communication issues. There is a quote that's going around, that the problem with communication is the assumption that it's been done. And this is what happens with a lot of situations. And I appreciate the fact that there is transparency right now that Andrea pointed out with the meeting notes going out and the fact that the calls are open. So that's great. But once again, I go back to the fact, well, what about people that don't have access to a computer? How do we communicate to them what's going out? I know for the fact that I'm on the Black Caucus, and there's older members of the Black Caucus that really aren't aware of what's going on in the new group that we're using, because they were all in a Yahoo group, but now we're using a Wigio group. And so they feel like they're completely out of the loop. So occasionally I have to make actual personal phone calls to some of the members to keep them up to date. So that's something we always have to think about. One of the biggest things I would like to see, though, is a lot of times I see we don't nourish new ideas that come up. We sort of squash them in their path. So a lot of people, especially, I don't know if this is sort of a question out to Dennis, Mike Dennis, if younger Greens or just people new into the party come in with ideas, fresh ideas of, hey, we should try to do this. And instantly it's shut down, like, it's not going to work. No, it's not going to work. That's the kind of thing of well, we value your idea and we'll look into, if that's possible to implement. So just basic things like that are one of the things we should do. That's basically it. Like I said, I don't want to go on for long, but like I said, as someone from the outside looking in, it's just about basic, where we are now and where do we want to be? Like Andrea mentioned before, she has a goal to make the party the best as it can be. But I also come from a place of a goal without a plan is just a wish. So we really have to think about a plan in place to get everything that we want done. That's it.
Thank you, James. Next we have Joy, and you are unmuted.
Yes, I think one of the ways, some of the internal administrative changes that would be helpful in addition to better communication could be like the types of communication that we use, because everyone does not process information the same kind of way. So if there was a platform, that was kind of consistent with everybody being able to, be more of an inclusive platform. And another thing, I think we should also look at welcoming people into our party. And once they're here, we have to look at another reason is why people are leaving. Is it something that we're doing? Is it something, like what's happening? Because our platform and the Green Party is inviting. And we welcomed a lot of people in during this last election. So what are we doing, or what's happening to make people leave? And I think we should really address that. And also, I think we should incorporate dues, because we have the members. And Andrea just said how many people are registered with the Green Party. Now, what about the states that you don't have to register as Green? There are plenty of people out there too. And I would love to see for us to have commercials on television. That would be a good thing to see, maybe during the election, hear us on radio. So I think those are ways that, we can help. And I think there should also be a uniform method for dealing with disputes from the locals all the way up. So there won't be any confusion or anything like that. So those are some of the tips, that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Last on this question is Michael Dennis. You're good to go.
So I think as a baseline, we just need to make our information transparent and centralized, for one. So I think before a lot of these other ideas, we simply just need to figure out, like, where can we reliably go to get committee minutes or a membership list for all of the committees? Where can I find, as a national committee member, a list of contact information for the for the co-chairs of all of the state parties and caucuses? So I think that's just like baseline number one. We need to centralize some of this information and have a culture where we need to share that and have that accountability, that we keep that up to date. I agree that there's a lot of people doing too much work or who wear too many hats within the Green Party, who are trying to fill these gaps, and we need to bring in new blood. Something that we successfully did during the Stein Baraka campaign was have like a volunteer positions page on the website. So if your committee, for example, I'm a member of the Ballot Access Committee and we need someone in Arkansas to be the ballot access lead there, that could be on a page. The fundraising committee needs, this particular kind of role. The outreach committee is looking for someone to do this. State parties could potentially even use it. But that would also be a way to say, hey, we have these particular needs and we are trying to bring more people into the structure. I think another part of the issue is that we have a lot of people who have incredible knowledge of the structures, and they need to share that information so that other people can come in and assist them. So I think that we should have an educational platform, not only for kind of those internal skills, but that can also be a storehouse for things like our CCC video or educational calls that our the Young Greens Caucus has started in the past month. As far as transparency, I think we should have quarterly calls of the steering committee to the national committee. Some of y'all might have participated in a call that the Stein Baraka campaign led twice, I think in like late September, October with the national committee, where there was kind of an overview given and then breakout sessions. I think we could do something similar for the steering committee to facilitate communication and transparency with the national committee, which is the main body of the party.
Thank you, Michael. Our next question involves our media strategy. And it's very simple and very broad. How can we improve our current media strategy? And I'm going to start this one off with Gloria, and you are unmuted and on screen.
Great, thank you. I think with any important component of our party, there needs to be a plan, a strategic plan, a strategy. I think that's something that we could improve upon in terms of national media. It's terrific, once again, that the current steering committee, put the resources and the priority into creating a position that's full-time. I think that's really necessary. Once again, paid staff, as we improve our kind of fiscal stability, is what will be able to do the kinds of jobs that don't work for people who are volunteering. You know, I like that we are beefing up our social media. I don't hear as much about that, but I think that that's another area that I would like to take a look at. Media is not my area of expertise. I did have an opportunity to both learn and participate during the Stein Baraka campaign in some of the media work. Actually took over some of that for a little while. What I'd like to see is something we've been trying here too, and I think campaigns try that a lot, is like, who is pitching the Green Party spokespeople, a Green Party on any of these political shows? Of course, it will be a challenge to do that on some of the national shows, but can we do that regionally or locally? I think that we are a voice that should be heard, and just like in the debates, we are often blacked out of that role. And I think having somebody dedicated and a dedicated plan to be able to do that and be in contact, just sending a press release sometimes is not going to get the attention of the news media, whether it's the kind of political talk shows or the papers, and see that happen and be. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Next up, I have Anita. You are unmuted and live. Okay, so I think that kind of as Gloria mentioned, some regional approaches, I think, are more on the ground regional campaigns that highlight the diversity of who we are and what we do. I mean, we have been pegged with some very unfair characterizations that are not true. And we are pegged as being all white. We're pegged as being a lot of white guys in Birkenstocks. We're pegged as being anti-vaxxers and anti-science, and none of that is true. And I think with having our real activists play a role as spokespersons in their local areas, because honestly, we're not going to make much headway on some of those national programs, but there's a lot of local programs that we could be getting our people on, and who could be talking about who we are, what we do. And I think we have a great message that really we just need to, this is hard stuff, by the way. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, anybody is not currently doing the best that they can, but I do think that there are a lot of resources at hand that we need to make better use of. And those resources in particular are our leaders and our activists. Okay, thank you, Anita. Next up, we have Michael Dennis. And you are good to go.
I think one of the successes that we've seen recently on the media committee is when National sends out a press release or something about a local event. So in this sense, lifting up those local activists and state parties. But when National sends it out, sometimes it gets the attention of that local or regional news. So this is another area where locals and states and national, that communication needs to be improved so that we can support states in that way. We certainly need to amp up our social media, not just nationally, but provide that support to states. I was a key member of the social media team for Jill's campaign as well as Sherry's campaign. And during the first part of 2016, many of the articles that came out about Jill were either featuring tweets or really centered around the tweets. And we've seen on Sherry's campaign as well that utilizing Twitter to reach out to local reporters can also be sometimes more successful than sending out a press release. So we should assist state and local parties to do that. We should also think about getting together a speakers bureau or something like the Green Shadow Cabinet so that we have kind of a set stockhouse of official representatives of the party that we can pitch, as well as lift up the accomplishments and the activities that they are doing and have that kind of reflect on the Green Party as well.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we have Joy, and you are good.
Yes, thank you. I think some of the ways that we could help with the media strategy, and I think they're doing a good job anyway, you know, considering how the campaign was blacked out in a lot of the major, you know, news organizations and everything. I think the Green Party actually did a very good job. And so I think one of the ways we could improve the media strategy, we can use Facebook Live, Green Stream. We also have to reach out to the people that don't have access to a computer. So they would have to rely on radio or possibly, you know, the newspapers. So if we get out, you know, letting people know what kind of events that we're having, and inviting the community and everybody to join in, I think that would also help get our platform and everything that we stand for out in the community so they can know what all we're about. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Next up, we have James Lane, and you are unmuted and live.
Okay, great. So media strategy, you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I had to put power in my laptop. It was going to die. So media strategy is all about, it's strategy, basically. You have to think about, who do you want to reach? Who do you want to bring into the party? What's the message that you're going to get them to come into the party? So when you get that all figured out, the next part is, what methods are you going to use to deliver that message to get to them? You know, traditionally we use print, radio, TV. You know, now with the introduction of Facebook and Twitter, people are using those as media outlets. But then it's also managing that. It's not enough to send out a press release. If you don't have relationships with those media contacts, you won't go anywhere with that press release. So once again, it's another area of volunteerism. You know, going back to what Mike Dennis said, having a centralized list, centralized media list, and where volunteers that actually work on that committee to make sure that they're building relationships with those media people is huge. You know, lots of times I'll get media coverage from somebody just because they know me from Facebook and I invite them to a show or something like that. And that's the kind of relationships that we have to have. We know there's unfriendly media. So the thing is to look for friendly media that will bring our message through. There's a lot of people with podcasts. There's a lot of people with public access TV shows, a lot of people with independent websites. These are the people that are actually talking to us. A lot of these people are the ones that don't vote, and they say that publicly all the time. And those are our allies in this mission. So if we can reach out to those people and those people that are using their methods to reach those other people that feel the same way that they do, we can totally do great. So that's really my thing is, like I said, who do you want to reach? How do you want to get there? It's a basic thing. And then building a strategy around that.
Thank you, James. Next up, we have George. And George, you are unmuted and live.
Thank you, and good stuff that everyone's been saying. You know, if we look at this from the analytical end and do a little power mapping, we really come into what buttons really need to be pushed, who's in control. And to me, you know, the position of corporate media, especially in terms of local and state news. And I'm not only talking about our national campaign, I'm talking about our local candidates in terms of how much equal exposure that we get and normally that we don't get. You know, I'm talking about going to the masses more. We do a good job in social media. This is a whole new frontier, and we're on that edge. But when it comes to the majority of America picking up that paper, you know, as bad as it is, or catching 5 minutes of the news on TV or 3 minutes in drive time radio, we're not there. We're barred from there. And so to me, systematically, we have to start doing some different things. In our local communities, we need to start tackling editorial boards of newspapers in our own hometowns to get them to change those policies. If they're part of corporate networks, we need to tackle those. And on the educational standpoint, we need to keep drilling the inequity in terms of our voting system and our electoral system. You know, to me as an activist, our number one tool is education. And for the general public, we've not done that as much as we need to, nor have we had the opportunity because of these barriers. And to me, we have to go at these barriers. Now is the time. We can start winning these kinds of things just looking at the inequitable situation this last presidential election and the guilt in terms of the normal media, in terms of their support for Trump and trying to find some way around and being attacked. To me, as an old Black Panther, I say where there's a vacuum, you got to fill it. And so we need to punch our own holes in that wall. And that's what I'm saying. One of the things that we really need to do a bit differently now to really get the education out to the mass of people. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Next up, we have Andrea, and you are unmuted and good to go.
Cool. I actually was the person that wrote the job description for the full-time media director position last year. And, Scott McClarty was a 3/4 time employee. He was first a half-time, then 3/4 time. And we absolutely were excited to be able to bring him on full-time. And I think that we serve two different masters here. We're the electoral tactic of grassroots movements, right? But at the same time, as the 4th largest political party in the United States, we do have to fight for some relevancy within the mainstream media. And so when I wrote the job description for Scott, I kind of was looking at those two separate areas, right? And so one of Scott's charges, for example, is to develop, as precisely as everyone has pointed out, those relationships, not only with the mainstream media, not only with local mainstream media, but also new media and social media and bloggers and video YouTube personalities and that sort of thing, right? But we need to be really honest that there's a group of people who we're trying to gain relevancy with who are never going to join the Green Party for whatever reasons they have. James alluded to the fact that most people in the United States don't vote. It's actually 54% of all people who are eligible to vote don't vote. And it's not because they're lazy. It's not because they don't care. It's because they won't participate in their own destruction. We are the party for them, and we need to get to them. And so we need to find those avenues where they are communicating with each other. Marketing 101, you speak in the language of the market that you're trying to serve. And so one of Scott's charges is to develop communication streams with the frontline community specifically to communicate with them and to talk about our platform with them and that sort of thing. Of course, that's a responsibility that we all have. Scott is working on messaging and talking points with the steering committee. He is sending out those press releases and developing more of those relationships with some of these YouTube personalities that are out there. He actually drove home this launching of the Green Stream, which is an incredibly important tool that we need to exploit. And so as he has come on full time and through the guidance that his job description has provided him, we're really starting to see a lot of these things come online. Now, going forward in the next 2 years on the steering committee, I think that it's now high time that we hire at least a part-time social media coordinator. Right now, it's very ably handled by a great group of volunteers, many of them from the Youth Caucus, yay, Youth Caucus, but we need to dedicate resources to that job. Again, the people that I believe that we need to be talking to who really can be served by the Green Party are avid social media users. Most people don't realize that many houseless people who live off of their cell phones basically are actually very social media engaged because it's possible in their data plan with their cell phones and things like that. So going forward, we need to think about how we're talking to those frontline communities. Now that Scott has some goals and a job description, he's very ably stepping up and taking care of that. So we've got a lot of room to grow. We need to apply more resources to it. We need to adapt to the people that we're trying to recruit. I think we're in a great track, and I'm very committed in the next 2 years to keep pushing that forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. Trying to figure out where I'm echoing. Okay, thank you, Andrea. For our last question, we had a couple questions submitted in regards to Proposition 835. which was passed last year by the National Committee and then confirmed at the Presidential Nominating Convention. For those who are not aware of what Prop 835 is, it officially declared the Green Party of the United States an eco-socialist party, opposed to both capitalism and state socialism. So given the passage of that that proposal and that new plank in our platform, I would like to ask the candidates to briefly talk about their position generally on that decision. Do you support our move with 835, or would you prefer to see us move in a different direction? And then more specifically, if you support it, what can we do to build on that success and act as a party on those values? If you don't support it, what moves do you think we should make in regard to this area of our platform that you think would better serve us than Prop 835? And we're gonna, since it was proposed by the Youth Caucus, we will start with Michael Dennis, a steering committee member of the Youth Caucus. And you are unmuted and live.
Well, I will correct that and actually give a shout out to the Green Party of North Carolina, who was the original proposer of 835, and I believe the Party of New York was the first co-sponsor, with Gloria being the primary editor. The Youth Caucus certainly did sign on very early to 835, with the steering committee putting out a unanimous statement in favor of it, as well as our entire caucus membership voting, I believe, over 90% in favor for it. And so I'm an avid supporter of 835. I think that it's brought a lot of people into the Youth Caucus because, as polling shows, the younger generation is more open to the term socialism as opposed to capitalism. We see the ranks of DSA exploding. We've also seen our membership in the Young Greens grow over the past year because of this amendment to our platform. I think that it's really important that this amendment lays out the distinction that we are not in favor of state socialism, nor are we in favor of capitalism. There have been, some concerns on the National Committee that, maybe there are some other parts of the platform that need to be updated to provide some more elaboration or clarification. I think 835 was a first step. It laid out kind of the two things that we are opposed to and a general direction forward. I think that there's a lot of conversation that needs to be had to further develop it. And that one way that we can really utilize this eco-socialist platform amendment to our advantage, especially amongst the Youth Caucus, is for coalition voting. So people that participate in, Left Elect or whatnot, that we need to be more aligned with, ISO, SALT, other leftist organizations. The Youth Caucus recently changed our bylaws so that we can have affiliate chapters, like the Stein campaign did for their youth program, so that we can eventually, when we're ready, perhaps be more so in conversation with those other organizations on the left, whether they be more like DSA or maybe a little more radical socialists than us. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next, we're going to move to Joy, and you are unmuted and live.
Hi, yes. Well, when I think of eco-socialism, I think of a vision where we're transforming our society to be one with nature. And so I would be for Prop 835. I mean, we can take a look and see what's happening in our environment and see how our water is polluted by oil spills and runoff and dumping. I mean, we have climate change. I mean, so I would be for 835.
Okay. Next, we have James Lane. You are unmuted and good to go.
Great. I remember when 835 passed, along with my proposal 815 for adoptee rights at the convention, and it was such an amazing moment to hear Gloria and Andrea talking on the mic about what this meant. And it's just, for me, it was surprising. I'm like, what? We actually had to do this to actually make this a real thing. I mean, I thought we always were eco-socialists. So it was just great to see something like this actually passed. And anything to dismantle it wouldn't make sense to me. But well, as Michael said, if there's issues that need to be cleaned up in language or whatever to make it more where it needs to be, then I'm all for that. So that's it, short and sweet.
Thank you, James. Next, we have George Martin. You are unmuted and on screen.
Well, there we are. Thanks everybody, and I thank your comments. I wasn't involved in that proposal in terms of its concept and precept. I'm certainly there as to how I could improve it. I can't speak to that, not knowing the detail of it. But what I can say is that for the last 10 years internationally, I've been a leader within the World Social Forum, anti-imperialism, anti-capitalist, and been a leader among many nations in areas of reform. And also here in the U.S., when we talk about eco-socialism, my role in the climate movement is huge. You know, it's difficult for us to get positions as Greens in terms of the public events. But at this year's climate march of 200,000, I was one of the closing speakers, introduced as the Green Shadow Cabinet Ambassador of Peace. And it's significant in terms of what kind of exposure we can get. I spent a lot of my activism during the last 4 years working in terms of climate and applying those principles right all you know, in Africa and here in North America and in South America, more recently in Guantanamo. So the application of it, there's you know, that's been my life, how it applies to this proposition. I look forward to taking a look at, and if selected or not selected, would look at ways to be supportive and to help improve it. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Next, we have Andrea. Andrea, you are unmuted and live.
I love this topic. I just have to tell you, I mean, I'm so proud to have been affiliated with two of the co-sponsoring organizations. One was the Latinx Caucus, and one was the great state of Colorado, the Green Party of Colorado, who were co-sponsors of 835. And 835 makes me happy. It makes me happy because we've seen drastic change, even just in Colorado, of this influx of people who it's a no-brainer to them that the people who produce ought to have a say in the means of production and how that happens. And as a corollary to that, who understand that, you know, an injury to one is an injury to all. So we have an influx of people who are predisposed, you know, already to our 10 key values, especially in terms of social justice, economic justice, and diversity. You know, so this is for me, from where I sit, this has been a boon in terms of membership and excitement among not only the youth, but of radical people of color in this country who are really, you know, taking a good long look at the Green Party. You know, personally, I believe in system change. I don't believe in climate change necessarily, but system change. You know, and what I've seen about the people of this country is that they are good and they do care about each other. And when we return the decision making of how this commerce is conducted back to them, we will have tangible solutions that will put people ahead of profit. You know, a situation like we have with the polluted water in Flint or Washington, D.C. even, whose water is worse than Flint. It's a no-brainer for more people what we have to do, for most people, for what we have to do. But the problem is that when we have a government that focuses on facilitating profit over the needs of people, the wrong decisions get made. And so this is a party where we provide critical analysis of this massive contradiction, these contradictions that happen left and right. And so our job as a Green Party, now that we're empowered with 835, is to build power with the oppressed and to eliminate these contradictions in this society and bring back a democratic voice back to the people who are responsible for the production in this country. You know, we're an electoral party, in addition to an activist party, and we have to improve our effectiveness in building power you know, I'm running for election to the steering committee because I want to see that, and I'm encouraged by just the initial momentum by the passage of 835. I need to give a shout out to Gloria Matera, who not only was a co-writer but one of the main editors of 835. And I was just so proud back in Houston to be able to stand with her in support in front of our entire delegate, national party, to speak on behalf of this. So shout out to Gloria as well. Thank you. 835, woo!
Thank you, Andrea. Gloria, you are next, and you are unmuted and live.
Thank you for that, Andrea. It was, I was very proud to be a part of that with others who worked on it. And New York obviously stepped up to sponsor it with, longtime activists like Howie Hawkins, Brian Jones. But one thing I was proud of around 835 was the process. And I think that was a model. And I'm not sure everybody, it was so widely known. There was a lot of, I thought, unfortunate, acrimonious and kind of side debates that went on the national list. But it truly was a collaborative effort. And there was conversation between people who thought that language is too strong, that language is not strong enough, don't say it this way, say it that way. And I think we really tried to hammer that out as best we could. Was it perfect? Is everybody happy? No, but an important step for the party, a really important step for me in the kind of work that I would like to see in the vision I have. And what I want to say about 835 is it's very important that we were explicit. Like, capitalism is killing us. It is killing the planet, and it is already done so much damage in the communities who never had, who had been things taken from them, resources taken from them, rights taken from them, or never had them. And I think the party has to stand up to that. As I said at the convention, we can't say anymore we're not right or left, we're just forward. But which way are we going when we're forward? Now, sometimes there's a little tension about what we call it. If we call it eco-socialism, are we an anti-capitalist party? We have a long way to go. There are other we need to look at, and that are next steps to see where there may be some contradictions. I like to say it's an economic democracy plank because it really speaks to that. It speaks to people, workers, communities, taking ownership, making democratic decisions. And I think the next step is looking at engaging in the kinds of struggles that oppressed communities are suffering with or going through, and also looking at things like remunicipalization, taking back public power. Where can we do that? It is happening in this country. Can it happen more? We need to lead the way on those kinds of things around state banks, running public power, the kinds of things. And I want people to say, remember, it's big capital against. That's who we're fighting. Let's not worry about is a hardware store, the pizza store in the corner is going to get appropriated by the state. It is big capital, multinational corporations that we are going to take down with our people power.
Thank you, Gloria. Next, we have Anita, and you are unmuted and live.
Okay, so I think that the terms eco-socialism and anti-capitalist represent the underpinnings of the vision of the Green Party, compassionate communities that speak for themselves and govern themselves. And I think that this was a wonderful step forward. And I am very thankful to Andrea and Gloria and the Youth Caucus and all the folks who have the vision to put this forward. Now, I would also add that in the hood where I live, to many people, those words are almost meaningless. And I think that one of our tasks is to make a connection between compassionate community and those words and what it is we are doing and how it's a realistic idea. It's not pie in the sky, and it's something that our communities deserve. Sometimes I am very worried that our communities have accepted the notion that certain things must be earned, like the right to health care, like the right to clean water. No, those things are things that they deserve. They deserve now, and they deserve a clean environment. And that this is, I think, what we are talking about with this issue. And I am very glad that many wise people put this forward, and how we translate that for our communities, I think, is an important next step.
Thank you very much, Anita. So that ends the question portion of our forum. Thank you to our viewers, and thank you to our participants who have sat through this about twice as long as we originally had hoped. But that's what happens when you get 7 passionate people together and start letting them talk and answer questions. It's a good thing. Everybody's going to get, and oh, real quick, I want to note that any of the questions that we didn't cover today, I will forward to the A&M planning committee with the possibility of them being implemented into the in-person forum that will happen on Saturday, I believe in the late morning at the annual national meeting. The last schedule I had didn't have an exact time, but we will be quick to get that up, and I will add it to the description of this link for future viewers as soon as I find that. But now we're going to give everyone a chance to do a 2-minute outro, a 2-minute recap of what we've talked about today, and we will start with Joy. And you are unmuted and live.
Hi, thank you. I think we have to get back to why we're here. We're all activists, and we all want the Green Party to grow. And I believe with growing, there has to be unity. And with unity, we're including everyone. No one is rejected for any kind of reasons. I mean, you can take a look at the caucuses that we have. We have the Lavender Caucus, the Black Caucus. I mean, we're all there. There's a place for people who are new and are coming in to feel comfortable with something that maybe they didn't get somewhere else or with another party. So we want them to feel, you know, welcomed. And we want to grow the party, and we want to move the party onward and upward. And I think we have the right people to do it. And I'm looking at everybody on here. We're all activists. We all want the best for our communities. We all want to see, you know, the Green Party, you know, achieving ballot access to where everybody can vote for us, you know. So that's where I am. And, you know, I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak to everyone. And don't forget to rank me first. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Next, we have James Lane, and you are unmuted and live.
Hi, everyone. So once again, thank you for setting up this forum and all the work that I know goes on behind this. And hello, everyone. So once again, my name is James Lane. And before this call started, somebody actually messaged me saying, so do you really want to do this work, or why are you doing this? And I'm like, just let everyone know, I'm somebody that doesn't put my name against something unless I'm actually going to do it. And so in my last 17 years of working as a Green, a lot of people don't know me, and they don't realize that I'm actually someone that pitches in, and wherever is needed, I'll actually do the work that needs to get done. So this is, you know, one of those situations where I sort of felt, based on things that now that I'm on the Black Caucus and on the NC, based on conversations going by and things that needed to get done to move the party forward, this is why I decided to put my name forward, because I love this party. It's the only party I've ever been a part of, and I'm committed to take it all the way to where it needs to go, to make it as the true, you know, political and activist movement that it needs to be in this country, to sort of right all the wrongs that we've been seeing over the last, you know, 200 plus years or more that this country's been around. So long story short, I am running to help bring, you know, efficiencies where I can, you know, to help a lot of the things that we talked about today, improvements that we need to make, you know, talk about like centralizing information, transparency, all these issues. But at the end of the day, this is going to be a vote. And if I don't make it onto the steering committee, I'm not going to be like some people where it's like, oh, they didn't get elected. This place is racist. That's not me. You know, I'll still be around for help. You know, people know how to get me. Go to votejamesLane at gmail.com. So you can always reach out to me. If there's anything that people need, I'm there for you. Michael Dennis knows that. I got laid off. I was totally depressed and horrified that this happened to me in this company where I was at for 14 plus years. But I worked with Mike Dennis for a few months, helping him with phone banking and stuff like that, just because it needed to get done. Didn't get paid for it because I was on a agreement with my job. So yeah, it's not about money. It's not about notoriety. It's about getting the job done. And if people want to vote for me for someone that gets the job done, I'm your guy. Thank you.
Thank you, James. George Martin, you are next, and you are unmuted and on screen.
Thank you. I'm going to sound old here, but at 16, I was 10 feet from Dr. King when he gave his I Have a Dream speech. And the problem today is that too much of America is still dreaming. America needs a Green Party, and we're positioned to take it to that next level, but to be a non-traditional party, not only in terms of our makeup, multi-generational, multi-ethnic, but also in terms of the base values of humanity that we possessed and that we have promoted. We need to share that. And through that, I would look to helping in terms of my own personal focus within our party in these coming years. I'd look to helping grow membership by increasing our public visibility in the social movements. We're all involved in that, but oftentimes we're not involved as Greens. We don't get to that lectern. And this is an opportunity that we have proven in many places that helps us grow by people getting us to know us and by us making meaningful contributions. And that's something that needs to be done as campaigns through education, connections, toolkits. And it's an opportunity to really show off, as Joy has talked before, about our 10 key values and the supporting our platform. That's why we're here. And the more that's understood, the greater our party will grow. Secondly, I want to help in, this is going on already, but we have to do a better job as we grow in terms of providing training and leadership development, media, social media, candidate schools, along with other resources to support local, state, and national candidates. We didn't have a chance to relate to that question about new volunteers. And to me, that's such an important thing, is to grab hold of that while it's hot. One of the things that we might do would be to have online forums such as this for new members, maybe once a week, so that they can talk. And I find when people join an organization, and they get a chance to talk about how they feel, they get better invested in that organization and sooner. So there are some things that we can do to capture those new volunteers if we're not already doing them, to make the connections with them, and also to give them things to do. And we need people, we need legs to do things. So we need to package that and take advantage of that. The other thing that I want to play a leading role in is challenging the electoral barriers that have been holding us back. I mentioned the corporate media and the electoral boards in terms of corporate media, but we've been hit with it over the years in terms of voter suppression, of voting machines. And I first wrote about voting machines in 2002, and I am proud of the fact that our Wisconsin Green Party and we led the Wisconsin presidential recount, and it's not over yet. And we're still fighting to get into those machines. I think these are important things that have really been holding us back and not given us that platform to the masses of people. And to me, systematically, we need to tackle that. We need to tackle these debates. We need to be ready to go to jail more often. We need to be public. We need to be outside of these outlets and in the media and forcing the change. And we know how to do that as activists, because if we don't knock down these barriers, we are not going to take it to the next level. Now, we're not just tree huggers. We run candidates and we will get more elected. I'll work toward our Green Party's full participation in the U.S. political process. Again, our party's full participation in the U.S. political process. Government has been in the quagmire at all levels. We look to compete, get elected, be a mediator, a catalyst, a coalition builder to help move our government forward in serving we the people. America needs the Green Party and we will grow it. Rank me number your first choice for steering committee. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Andrea, you are next. You are unmuted and live.
Well, thank you. Again, everyone, my name is Andrea Merida. I am currently serving on the steering committee, and for some reason, I'm the only incumbent. This has been a really rough couple of years, and I think folks want to focus on their local and state parties, and they deserve to. You know, but I'm running to keep this party pushing in the right direction. One of this effective growth, smart messaging, and supporting the leadership at every level of the party. And going forward in the next 2 years, should I be reelected, I want to improve the value add portion of the relationship that we have with our state parties. You know, we're in a position with the resources that we have as a national party to help them come online and be more prolific and proficient and efficient with state parties' fundraising abilities, with their organizing capacities, and that includes qualifying the lead. Definitely marketing and media outreach. And so we have that capacity, and as I've indicated in the way that, you know, for example, writing the job description for the media director, one of his tasks is actually to help train state party media people to be able to do that, you know, because we have to respect the grassroots, the bottom-up nature of our party. You know, I think too that another thing that we really need to focus on, and I'm absolutely committed to it, is launching for once a political education campaign that our state and local parties can participate in, and especially educating people on eco-socialism. And I have to say, the intersection of race and class in our society. We're seeing a lot of activity, but we're seeing people who maybe don't understand these fundamental concepts. And so there's a lot of conflict in our state and local parties because there's not really a meeting of the minds. And our 10 key values provide a lot of direction, but in particular, I think we need to help people with eco-socialism and race and class intersection as a start. I think the other way that we add to the value of the relationship with state parties is to help them build conflict resolution and good democratic processes within their bylaws, and really learn how to put together, you know, disciplinary committees and dispute resolution committees and things of this nature. Because one of the things that really disincents Greens from participation is unchecked conflict that manifests in terms of, you know, sexist attitudes or other oppressive attitudes. So we need to be able to help state parties deal with those things. And one of the last things I'd like to focus on, of course, I'm going to focus on a lot of things should I get reelected, but definitely making sure that we have the resources by building a compromise between a culture of dues-paying membership and donations, and making sure that we all advocate and work hard toward holding up our end of the bargain, because we can't expect our staff, we cannot expect the National Committee to do things that we don't have the resources to do. So just like everyone, I hope that you rank me first. I will have to say that I don't see anybody in this group that I would not be excited to serve with, and I think that they've all proven their leadership and their vision going forward. But please do rank me first. I have some other ideas about who else you can rank as well. My name is Andrea Merida. I'm from the state of Colorado, and I'm excited to serve should you appoint me to another 2 years of the steering committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. We're going to have Gloria up next. And Gloria, you are unmuted and you are live.
Thank you, Chris. This has been terrific. Thanks everyone else, all the other candidates, for your great answers and stepping up to do this. I'm Gloria Matera, currently National Committee Delegate from New York State. Running for my first time as a steering committee position. I really feel strongly that to build a strong national party is really to offer more resources, support, and strengthen our state parties. That's really where a lot of things need to happen on that level. I think it's about education, it's about training, it's about skill shares. I want to recognize the CCC for their webinars, which are giving candidates and campaign staff new skills. And I think that we need to do two kinds of skills that we need our people to be doing in the States. You know, I think Greens are very good at mobilizing. Let's get out to that protest. Let's be seen, be important. But organizing is really, we hear from people that they want help or have some designated for that in their state party. And I think we can do a lot of sharing online, a lot of best practices we can share with state parties. And that's kind of the internal party. In addition, more campaign schools and candidate training, but also movement schools, popular education schools, patriarchy. I think it's important for our members to really understand that and be able to have a dialogue about that and talk about it. Externally, I really see that we need Green Party spokespeople, and I like the idea. I'm going to steal it from, I think it was Anita, that should be growing out of our state, because it will show of what this party is. And our caucuses are growing and vibrant and elected to be representing their parties, caucuses, being on committees. Say that I'm in the Green Party because to contest for power. Right? There's a lot of advocacy groups out there and a lot of movement groups out there, and we love them and we work with them and we want them to be connected to us. But we're a political party. We contest for power. That means running more candidates, so having more resources for that and getting more people elected. And then when those people are elected, how do we support them? Sometimes we forget about that when we have a village mayor somewhere or a small school board or a state legislature. We need to go for those people who are able to get elected locally. How is our national party helping them navigate a pretty treacherous political system, and how can we help them reach higher office? For the party, I'm very dedicated and would like to do that. I've shown my dedication to the party. I have a lot of managerial and organizing skills that I think will be helpful if you elect me to the steering committee. We all, I guess, need to say rank us first, because being first is kind of like stuff we don't really talk about. That's kind of a capitalist kind of thing, but that's the way of system and how we're able to bring all these candidates and a fair way of voting. We need to be more visible, I think, in the movements when we say we want the party to be the electoral arm of the social movement. We engage in that. And one way might be looking at these national moments. How do we help our state party as a national party when they're on the ground in Flint and as we did at Standing Rock? And so I think that we coordinate that, and the Eco Action Committee tried to do some of that recently, which I'm a member of, and so I'd like to see more of that happening, lifting up what parties are doing as they provide those resources, more media attention. All for your vote.
Thank you. Next, we have Anita. And you are unmuted and on screen.
So once again, my thanks to you, Chris, and to my fellow candidates. I am confident that no matter who you vote for, no matter who you put first on your ballot, you get good value. The people who are running for steering committee, all of the people I see here, are people that I respect and that I am committed to continuing to work with, regardless of where my position in the Green Party will be, because I will be in the Green Party in some respect, no matter what happens after this election. I am committed to the long-term growth of the Green Party, and I'm proud to be a Green. I feel like I am a better person because I am a Green. And I hope that this experiment works. I hope that this experiment works to make us the political voice of the people of this country who have gone unheard and unrecognized. And so, again, I thank you for your support. My name is Anita Rios, and I am from the Green Party of Ohio. And I hope I can see some of you in New Jersey.
Thank you very much, Anita. Next, we have Michael Dennis. Michael, you are on screen and unmuted.
Thank you, Chris, for hosting us. Thank you to all of the other candidates, and thank you everyone who is watching live right now or is watching this at some point in the very near future. I hope that we have more forums like this, not just when we're having elections, but have more face-to-face or video contact on our committee and other bodies. I think it really brings a personal connection that we sometimes need in the Green Party. And so we all agree that the Green Party is, you know, a dire necessity right now in our political and economic situation. It's the necessity, you know, for oppressed persons, for workers, for our planet. And that so many of these systems, certainly the electoral system, works against our party's success. And we need to come together to battle that, but our own systems need to work for us, as opposed to ambiguously or half and half. So as a baseline, we need to look at improving our organizational structures. And I think once we can do that, then we need to also have a more engaged national committee. There's been an incredible amount of amazing ideas during the past 2.5 hours, it looks like at this point. A lot of these ideas are ideas that are going to have to be proposals that will come through the National Committee, not necessarily, you know, something that the steering committee can do. So we need to engage the National Committee. We need to also engage volunteers. There's been thousands of them that have come in since the election, and we're going to need them. If we implement a lot of these ideas, those of us who are doing already, you know, a lot of the work, you know, are going to need more people to come in. And to do that, we're going to need education. So we need an educational platform, skills training, as many of the other people, candidates have mentioned. And then I think those three things allow us to build up the capacity to really be able to provide more significant resources to our caucuses in state parties. So I'm an ideas person. I'm a systems thinker. I'm solutions oriented. I'm happy to work with pretty much everyone. And so I would be, you know, overjoyed to have your #1 ranking or your #2 ranking. But mostly I'm excited to see a lot of you very soon in Newark and to give you all a big hug. And so thank you all.
Thank you very much, Michael. That is the conclusion of our candidates forum. I want to express my great thanks to all the candidates for taking what we thought was going to be an hour, and as Michael mentioned, this is now more about 2.5. You know, taking this time to come and talk to me and talk to the viewers, more importantly. It's always good, as Michael said, to get Greens together. You know, these conversations are always inspiring to me. There's a never-ending amount of good ideas that come out of every Green that I've ever met, almost. And so it's very inspiring, and it makes me proud to be a Green every time I get together with people, whether it be in person or digitally like this. I think it's also very important to have these face-to-face discussions, like Michael mentioned. You know, a lot of our discussion takes place in very inhuman forms, in listservs and things like that. So it's nice to see each other's faces and get to know each other a little better. I want to thank Starlene Rankin and David Doonan. Without Starlene and David coming through for me last night and today, you know, this may not have happened. I want to thank all of our candidates for bearing with me through our technical difficulties. I want to working with me and getting everyone on, and can't say how excited I am that all 7 candidates were able to be here today. I want to thank our viewers for taking time to listen and educate themselves about this upcoming election, whether they're members of the National Committee or not. And if you're watching this right now and you're not a member of the National Committee and aren't an active Green, you can check out gp.org. You can learn more about our party. You can get in contact with your state party, your local party, get involved in some way throughout the Green ecosystem. We would love to have you. We are a people-powered party, and we need people to have that power. Also to the viewers, I want to thank you for sitting through the technical glitch earlier when George was talking and you were watching me watch George talk. So I can't say enough how awesome this is. I hugely look forward to seeing you all next week in Newark. And a week from today, we will be doing this again in person, and we hope to have that live stream and go from there. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good night.